Welcome back from what was described yesterday not as a coffee break, but as a cake break. I'm not sure if we've got a good cake break going today here at the Great Telco Debate. But thanks very much for everybody to get back for our second session, which is focused on monetizing the access edge. My name is Ray Lemaitre. I'm the editorial director at Telecom TV. I'm helping out Guy here today to give him a break from hosting some of the sessions. Letting him vote in the audience for a couple of them. So, monetizing the access edge. Should telcos package connectivity with edge compute, AI inference, local caching, and security services? Can they monetize access as a service for enterprises and developers through APIs? These are just some of the questions being put forward around this debate. So, as with the other sessions, we are going to start off by hearing from our expert witnesses. Now, we were due to have 4 expert witnesses, but unfortunately one has had to drop out this morning, Francesca from Vodafone, for reasons that couldn't be helped. So we just have 3, but that gives them more time to deal with the tough questions that they are going to get from the room, I know. So we'll come to them in just a moment. And then, of course, we'll come over to Graham and Chris for the motion. And then we'll get into the Q&A part of the session. So monetizing the access edge, our first speaker for the 3 minutes is Beth Cohen, who is Telecom Product Strategy Consultant at Luth Computer and long-time Verizon employee as well. So, Beth, your 3 minutes starts now. Do you want to just speak from there, or do you want to come? Okay. All right, Beth, the floor is yours.
It's nice being able to walk again, put it that way. So I am going to set the table here. So I am going to be talking about where data is, where data gets generated, where data needs to be, where applications need to be at the edge and at the core, and how the network fits into all of this. So let's think of this as, and AI certainly plays into this, but it's not necessarily only AI. There's plenty of use cases that do not require AI. So think about it. An IoT cloud, if you will, or cloudlet or foglet, has thousands of devices all over the place, and they're all generating data. And they all need to be, that data needs to be processed. And they also need to have feedback and, act on that data. Or, we want some applications to act on that data. So that data is feeding into something. You probably don't want to bring it all the way back into the core because let's, think about it. I'll use an example of an oil drilling. Oil and gas, they have drilling platforms all over the place. They're in the middle of the ocean. They're out in the middle of nowhere. And the data that's getting generated, about what's going on needs to be fed back to them so that they can act on it. And do you really want to bring it back into the core, which is expensive, particularly if they're in the middle of the ocean and it has to go over satellite or it has to go over some weak, terrible Wi-Fi, not Wi-Fi, 4G link. And so, monetizing the edge to me means, making sure that the data gets processed where it needs to be. And the applications are located where they need to be to process that data and provide the feedback that that our customers need. And how does the telco play into this? Of course, we're providing the network to do it. And it's not just dumb pipes, because we also own those edge devices. We have routers, we have virtual routers, virtual network services out at the edge, and we have the capacity to provide a platform that our customers can use to feed those devices. There you go. And I gave next person 12 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, Beth. So Neil will be happy because there was a definite focus on the customer there. So that's keeping the audience happy. So our next expert witness is Jishnu Dasgupta, who's Head of Marketing Network Monetization Platforms at the Cloud and Network Services Division of Nokia. So, Jishnu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm joined by my trusty AI assistant over here. So, we've spent quite a few years being stuck in a funk. But finally, as telecom, we are changing. We've been investing heavily in automation, cloud-native networks. We build up a programmable service fabric. And we are exposing the capabilities of the network for the very first time, natively through APIs towards developers and audiences. What's also important is the fact that we're finally collaborating across the industry to provide these in a unified form to enterprises. So the store is ready, but to clarify the value perception and attach it with the value which we are providing from our side, we need to collectively invest in more targeted vertical go-to-market motions. We're seeing early signs of clear demand signals. The first is in terms of the identity and fraud prevention opportunity. Now, every digital platform, not just banks, not just financial services, but social media platforms, e-commerce marketplaces, all of these are looking at stronger trust signals which they can use in real time. Now, we as a telco industry, we uniquely own the real-time subscriber, device, and identity binding, which makes us critical to this use case. The second is the requirement in terms of deterministic high-performance connectivity. Now, whether it be automotive, drones, media and entertainment, and even the gaming sectors, there's a need for it. Our trials with quality on demand have actually boosted cloud gaming frame rates by approximately 70%, reduced ping by 90%, and that has value. That has value to that gaming community. And where you have value, you can monetize. But I would argue that that's just the tip of the iceberg. The AI supercycle will actually be the one which generates the next wave of opportunities, whether it be GPU as a service, inference as a service, models as a service, agents as a service. Our differentiation as an industry lies in proximity. And for the first time, our being regional is our friend. It's our advantage. If you can somehow package the 3 C's, which is compute, connectivity, and compliance well, we can play a key role in the sovereign access edge. And then I don't think we'll really be crying about monetization anymore. That's it.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much, Jishnu. So, introducing there one of the hot topics at the moment, which we debated yesterday, also in this building, sovereign and sovereign services. So, our third speaker on this session, back very quickly after his earlier appearances, Warren Bayek, VP of the Technology Office at Wind River. So, Warren, another 3 minutes is yours.
And I have to say, this was also a last-second ad, by the way. So,
are you on all of them?
Yeah, I might be. This is about monetization, so I want to go in a little different direction than I was planning to. And the Appledore research said something really interesting, which is the last 10 years, telco is in a low single-digit growth pattern. And Neil mentioned in the last session, in 2016, he said, if we don't get together with customer representatives and other reps, with the telco people, we're not going to go anywhere. And you know what? We're now 9 years later, and you're an Oracle now. And I'll say the same thing today. If we repeat the past, that's the definition of insanity if we expect something different to happen. So if we go through the same procedures we've been following the last 10 years or 20 years, 10 years from now, the telcos are going to be looking back and saying, man, NVIDIA and all these other software giants saw 60% growth, and we saw 2%. And we don't want to be there in 10 years. We want to change that paradigm. The value in apps, cloud services, AI platforms that they've put on top of our networks have been incredibly lucrative these last few years. That's the opportunity we need to seize in telco. We need to work with these other industries and these other parts of the industries, particularly the customer side, and make sure that telcos have a part in that new revenue that's going to be coming in, and it will be coming in. Where it will come in, I don't know any of us have all the answers, but I will say one thing I've learned in the past few years is if NVIDIA says something's going to happen, it's probably going to happen. And they are convinced that if they can put developer toolkits, they're all about empowering the developer to give the consumers what they need. If we can work with companies like NVIDIA, and if we can work together as a consortium across this broad industry, we will create value where we probably can't see it today. And I can give you use cases that I can see happening in insurance and healthcare and CV2X and security and fraud prevention. That's the tip of the iceberg, frankly, on where the possible revenue streams exist in this space. So we just need, as an industry, to keep building out what we already have. We already have the distributed footprint this industry, this AI revolution needs. We already have the spectrum that it needs. We already have the sovereignty it needs. Now we have to leverage that and bring everyone to our table, and we need to be a part of partaking in the revenue that will be happening in this space.
Okay, fantastic. So well done. Warren borrowed 3 of Beth's seconds there, but I think that's allowed. We'll let that pass. Okay, excellent. So 3 great expert witness statements to start us off. But of course, we have a motion that is now going to be brought to the table, brought to the room.
We have a motion. Here it is.
Graham.
Telco control over access puts them in a unique position to provide sovereign services. And the Amazon Alexa coin toss came up with Chris speaking for the motion and me speaking against.
If only you were tongue-tied throughout the day, it would be much better off me. Ladies and gentlemen, the question, I know many people discussed the sovereign topic yesterday, and it occurs to me that we're always looking for what uniqueness the telco industry brings to the market. You know, we talked about the on-ramp during the internet era, and obviously we've extended that connectivity paradigm to include all of that mobility, all those mobile devices. And of course, we're gradually extending it through cellular, through Wi-Fi, through satellite, to mean that access is now available to connect everything that we want to connect. The building that network environment, providing that access, as we know, is not enough. We need to make sure that the service is, of course, appropriate for the local environment. We've always talked about the localization, the hyper-localization of services, the hyper-personalization of services. We talked about it in mobile in that 2016 era when 5G was coming in. The issue today is, of course, a much more complex one. And the point of control of the network, in many ways, has moved away from the network itself. And we should, by the way, define network in that respect as well, because the customer's view of what the network is not the definition of what the telco thinks the network is. But the sovereignty, and I do like this pronunciation of sovereignty, which reminds me of Severin, which was the Russian spy collection during all the John le Carré novels, if you remember reading the John le Carré novels. So so think of sovereignty can be a bit threatening. But in this case, it's a positive issue, because what companies are looking for, what governments are looking for, what we're all looking for, is that safe environment where the connectivity brings the right services to us as individuals, right services as organizations, right services for us as society. So that connectivity piece, and it touches upon the security angle that was touched in the last debate, actually it becomes the point of focus where we can bring these services together. So that on-ramp, that trusted nature of the connectivity, the trusted nature of the telco, that we all they're our national champions, we love them most of the time, in terms of delivering the service. So actually becoming that focal point, bringing the security in, bringing those other services in, and becoming that point of aggregation but that trusted point of aggregation within that sovereign environment, because we do need services delivered locally. We need services that match both the local environment, local language issues. Yes, of course, it'll benefit from all the AI services that we've been touching upon in both debates already. But actually, it does give us a unique position as providing that service. It's what we're known for. It's about building the portfolio around that, but it is that trusted anchor tenant of the future services. So I would ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to put the green paddle forward when you're voting this time. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this motion is absolute horseshit, and you have to vote against it. Like this. That's what you do. Now, why is it horseshit? Because, look, sovereignty, data sovereignty, what does that really mean? That means running data centers inside a particular country, right? So that the data from customers or inside a company never leaves that country. And that is already being done. It's already being done by the hyperscalers in Germany, in France, in the UK. They've invested billions in this, in North America, okay, all over Europe. And in addition to that, there are local players. So, for example, you could think of Atos in France, which is also running a sovereign cloud service in France for the French government, right? You, as telcos, have no skills to be able to do this, okay? The only area where you might be able to get in is in the area of private networks, where you could have a local core in a port or an airport, which hosts certain applications which need to be close to close to devices in that place. But even there, those other companies are eating your lunch, along with major systems integrators. So, ladies and gentlemen, reject the motion, stick to the knitting, say no. Thank you.
Another clarion cry from the 1980s there, just say no.
Just say no.
Wilde, yeah, to go with Bob the Builder. Okay, so there is the motion. Please keep the motion in mind. And let's come to the audience to see if we've got any questions for our expert speakers. Okay, I can see one hand up over there, and another one here, and another one here. So,
yeah, I did. Okay, I got the box first, so I guess I'll start. Somehow, miraculously, it was behind me. I'm Christian Toivo, Executive Director of Telecom Infra Project. My question was changing in my mind as I started to speak, so I need to kind of refocus. But because we talked a lot about the mobile edge, and I think now here I'm thinking a little bit broader, but my basic question is really to the experts. What do you think about the level of cooperation, partnership between operators? And see, my thesis is that if you want to offer services to the broad public as a telco, as an operator, it's very hard to kind of bundle the services to your own access, because you want to provide the access to the service for any subscriber from any access. And how do you see that influencing the actual opportunity here? I think that's the biggest hindrance for a mobile edge or edge cloud run by an operator. It can't be unique to Vodafone or Telefonica or so, but it needs to be a common access. So that's my question. How do you see that?
You're asking particularly about access cloud.
Well, in
cloud
general, offering
services
services that are linked to the specific access of an operator. Is that viable?
Okay, got you. Okay.
I actually, yes, it is viable. I don't think you need to have that alliance. And I can speak from personal experience from Verizon putting out products that had those capabilities that are basically within the Verizon footprint. Certainly when we went global, Verizon is a global company. It does do, lots of partnerships with lots of, peering relationships. But the services themselves are unique to Verizon. Customers buy them from Verizon. They don't know, don't care don't need to know that, Verizon's working with, 50 other telecoms to make it all work. But the services themselves are at the edge. So they're within the customer site. They're not within the data center particularly. They're really out at the edge. And I used the IoT example earlier, but there's plenty of other examples where customers are doing, it can be AI or not, doesn't really matter, applications that really need to be at the edge. Either for latency reasons or for reasons that there's too much data to transfer back to the core. Utilities is one. There's a product called Gridwide that's been with Verizon for 15 years that basically tracks utility usage, like water usage and gas usage and electric usage for utilities for their customers. Absolutely fabulous edge case. AI is being added to enhance that. So that's my answer.
Okay, maybe I can expand as well on the question, because obviously Verizon is a very large telco. Verizon Business is a large business in itself, but not all telcos have that scale and have such advanced B2B enterprise services. So, is it only the very large tier ones with large enterprise operations that have that opportunity to go it alone? So maybe, does anybody else want to come in on this topic?
Yeah, so I think fundamentally we need to understand that the playing field has changed. Earlier, operators used to compete with each other. In new areas like network APIs, we see, for example, we have been engaging with Verizon, with AT&T, with T-Mobile. All of them come onto the same stage when we for a go-to-market, right? And the same thing for the end enterprise who's actually going to be using the capabilities. It doesn't matter, right? But so who owns the relationship? But that relationship needs to exist across and deliver that value across all networks, irrespective of where that end consumer might be, whether it be enterprise, whether it be consumers.
Warren, did you want to come in? Or?
Yeah, it's a great question, and competition in this space can be fierce, right? Even in North America, right? The AT&Ts and Boosts and Verizons all do compete. However, and I saw my CEO step into the room after the first session, so Jay, hold your ears. Much like in my space, in the CAS space, we have competitors, Red Hat and others, and I never fully consider that competition, right? This is an industry that has to learn to work together. And Ray, it's the old adage, it's a cliche, but it's true, right? The rising tide lifts all boats. In order to fully realize the potential of these services, all the operators are coming to the realization that we have to work together. And some of the services are absolutely capable of being compartmentalized. However, some of the ones, for instance, we're looking with our mother company Aptiv at things like C-V2X, where the cars are playing an interesting role. Well, if I only have Verizon playing with me and I roll into a place where T-Mobile or AT&T is the only provider, which isn't really possible in North America, but let's assume it were. Suddenly it doesn't work, right? That service won't work. So no one realizes the revenue. And going back to what I led with is, as we pull these consortiums together, one of the consortiums we're pulling together are the various service providers, right? And that they have to realize we all have to sit in the same room and come up with a playbook where we're all going to make money in this space. There is a lot, and I keep emphasizing this, and I'm maybe hyperbolic, but I don't think so. There is a lot of money on the table in the next 10 years in this space. A lot. Plenty for everyone in this room to make more money than 2% a year. And that's something we all have to start internalizing as an industry, that playing together benefits all of us. This is a bottomless pit of revenue coming if we really can take advantage of it.
Okay, and Beth wants to come back on that.
So the reality is that all the telecoms have been partnering or peering I think that's the official telecom term, peering together for decades. So, your cell phone works wherever. I have a cell phone that's, obviously it's a Verizon cell phone. Works perfectly fine now that I'm here in the UK. So the pattern, the capability is already there. We just have to, package it up properly.
Okay, so it's all about sort of making the most of that access capability, but partnering to make sure that everybody's getting a piece of the pie and you're not missing out on the opportunities by not partnering. I guess this is a key thing here. Okay, so I'm relying on my, because the lights are pretty bright. Okay, I can see a waving hand over here. Any other hands up? If you want to ask a question, really put your hand up high and wave it, and one of my colleagues with the microphones will. If you put it up, then somebody will bring you a microphone. But we'll go over there first.
So leaving aside the on-prem business edge for a private network or an oil rig or something like that, which I think is a special case, for the mass market, whether it's consumer or business or application developer facing, do we not need edge interconnect before we need edge compute? Because there's no point in having the peering point in Frankfurt if you're talking about sovereignty or low latency, and you're great, you're close to your edge, but I'm close to my edge, and our interconnection point is 1,000 miles away. It doesn't help. So do we need edge interconnect at a local level before any of this makes sense?
I think so. And again, so I'll use an example that's very personal to me, which is that there's a lot of AI being used for surgery now, like medical applications and stuff. So when I broke my leg, I had a lot of surgeries, and they used AI. I was at a teaching hospital, and it completely worked. Obviously, I was asleep during the surgery, but they did talk. Again, they told me about it afterward, and so obviously you need extremely low latency. You need high feedback. There's huge bandwidth, data being generated, for all of this stuff, and absolutely you need. It has to be at the edge. It has to be where. It can't be in the core. It can't be at the hyperscaler location.
So, to that same question, edge interconnect is essential, right? But we're providing that already as part of the overall telco community, whether it be in terms of data center interconnect solutions. We're providing it from the Nokia perspective as well. But even after that first part, where you have the edge interconnect, we're talking about the possibility of a bigger picture where we have an opportunity in terms of the overall infrastructure. We have opportunities in terms of delivering certain services, in terms of offering even applications and services like LLM as a service, et cetera, et cetera. There are many different initiatives which are going on, and arguably telcos don't have the expertise in all of it, right? We can never say that, for example, we know more about compute or we know more about storage than hyperscalers. So there needs to essentially be some sort of partnerships in place. Now, partnerships with hyperscalers on the edge could potentially be challenging in the era of data sovereignty, especially with certain acts which have come through, like the US Cloud Act. I don't know whether all of you have seen that, but it provides extraterritorial access to data which is resident on hyperscalers across any country in the world. And these are the things which are actually challenging the notion of sovereign zones actually being implemented in different regions by hyperscalers. And that's where potentially we have to step in with local players like what you were saying as Atos in Europe. Those are potentially, partners whom we need to engage with to truly get the sovereign cloud in life. At least until, clarifications around things like the Cloud Act are solved.
It'll be interesting to see how the Cloud Act gets applied outside of the U.S., however.
There is an example, actually. So, I'm sorry. All right. There is an example for this. Now, there is this bank in the Netherlands called Amsterdam Trade Bank. Okay. Now, this bank is completely resident in the Netherlands, but it had tie-ups with one of the large Russian banks, got impacted by sanctions. The US government overnight said that Azure put off access to their systems, put off access to their email, put off access to everything. Overnight, the bank went down. Okay? The Netherlands courts went back, filed a case, then finally got them back access, but obviously it was never the same. Now, rightly or wrong, I'm not debating whether it was right or wrong for the sanctions to actually have been implemented. But the fact is that there is a territorial incursion per se, which can actually happen through the Cloud Act, which is what happened in Netherlands.
Yeah, but in that case, it was because Microsoft is a U.S.-based company,
Correct.
and that's
Correct.
how they were able to do it.
That's it.
So if it had been a Netherlands company or
would
an
not.
EU company, they would not have been able
Yes.
to do it.
So that's why there is inherently a little bit of concern right now, even as hyperscalers like AWS, Azure, Google, they're all establishing their own so-called sovereign areas, sovereign data centers in Europe, but that Cloud Act still looms.
Okay. Warren, did you want to come in, or should we go to the next
I have
one?
a lot to add other than I agree. Hello, is this working still? Some of the use cases that we're talking about will require what you've mentioned, but I think it's not everything we're doing here does not require multiple connections across, but the local interconnects will always be there, and I think to your point, we've already got a lot of that in place, but I guess it's not. To me, it's not. Of course, we're going to do that, and I don't think it's an either or, right? Yes, we have to get that done, but I don't think that should hold us up from moving ahead with everything else. Is that?
Okay, we're going to come here. So please say as well who you are, where you're from, and then we've got another couple of hands, but do keep them waving high so that my colleagues can see you. Okay.
Thanks, Ray. So Fran here in Red Hat again. I'm trying to correlate the motion with the discussion, and I guess my question is, why do we think access is key to sovereignty? I would have thought it was more on the operational side, data retention. Access, I'm struggling to understand why it's the unique.
Well, I think we know which way you're going to vote then, Frank.
Probably giving away my hand, but no, maybe I'll be educated and change my mind. But
I'll say that data sovereignty, unlike what was said about that it's within country, I think it actually is much more about within companies as well. I mean, I know sovereignty means within country, but I think most people interpret it as I need to keep the data within the company. I need to keep the data safe from others. I know that's a big thing in the Asian area where IP intellectual property has to be protected because there's no patent laws saving you if somebody manages to steal that intellectual property. So I really see it as a much broader issue than just it has to be within country.
Yeah, we talked about sovereignty a lot yesterday, and I agree. We didn't. I think it was explicit. We never had a talk on defining it. And I agree, and it's why when I talked about it, I don't know if people caught this, but I rarely said country and I said entity for that very reason, is that while the term itself implies, or actually Webster would say it defines country, I don't think that actually plays out in the way a lot of us think about sovereignty and the way telcos do, frankly, because it really is about your data is your data and your information is your information. I know, having worked with Verizon and networks and other companies, they're incredibly tight with everything about their network, to the point that we can't even show network diagrams to anyone outside of the United States, right? Not that it wouldn't even, we could obfuscate it in a way that wouldn't compromise them at all. But the data sovereignty, to me, I'm with you, it really is a very localized thing. So that's where I think access plays into this, is that it's a very local use of data. And I think Manish said it really well yesterday. Data will find, well, it's kind of like water. It will find the right place to live, and the applications will too. And being able to keep everything that those applications are doing and all the data that they're sharing very localized to that access point is critical to making these services work out in the real world, right? To allow telcos to actually implement them and put them in their networks.
And let me add that, there was a big rush 10 years ago to move everything into the cloud, and we're seeing, we mentioned it yesterday, we're also seeing companies kind of moving it back out to the edge again for a lot of good reasons.
But it's a good question, Fran, but it could be that the relationship that telcos have because of their access networks and because of those connectivity relationships that puts them in a good position to be able to build sovereign services on top of that relationship. So I just want to bring that to the panel here and ask if that is the potential, as the motion suggests, and to come back to Neil's point earlier, and we'll come to your question in a minute, Neil, but I just want to ask the panel, do the telcos have what it takes internally in terms of their marketing, in terms of their sales professionals to actually sell this stuff to customers? They might have the access, they might have the network, they might have great ideas about services, but can they sell anything more than a connection?
No, they can't, Ray.
I'll answer.
I wasn't asking you.
Oh my God.
I'll say today the answer has to be no, right? The telco salespeople have a very, it's SIM and ARPU, right? And they do need to change. It is changing because it has to.
It's a Sisyphean task, put it that way.
It's turning a tanker, right, literally. But it's something they're going to have to learn.
It's been turning for 40 years, surely.
Yeah, and I keep coming back to this. If it doesn't change in 10 years, telcos are going to be looking back to that 2% and saying, what happened? It's obvious what happened, right? You were insane. You didn't change anything, and you wondered why things didn't change. So I say no. The answer is no today, for sure.
Okay. Jishnu, do you have a...
Yeah, I see it's a fact that telcos are not primed towards this market for selling anything other than connectivity today. We are setting go-to-market motions in place, but if we need to really accelerate this, and I've seen this from certain examples as well, one example is from Indonesia, if I remember correctly, Indosat. Okay, now Indosat has been working on building up an AI sovereign cloud. Okay, are they doing everything themselves? No. Infrastructure, they're working with local data center provider. GPU coming from NVIDIA. Applications coming from companies like Tech Mahindra, Capgemini, etc. LLM, they are working on some sort of an open source LLM, but there are other initiatives as well in terms of having those things in place. So everyone, this access edge opportunity is actually going to be serviced by consortiums. And telcos will need to invest into those consortiums. The value which they receive will be a combination of the value which they extract through connectivity which they're offering, but also in terms of investment into that overall consortium.
And who do you think will do the selling to the end customers?
I'm sorry?
Who will do the selling to the end customers?
I would hazard, and this is about hazarding a guess over here.
I think it's the applications people.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there is this whole application people layer, there are system integrators, etc. on top. These are the guys who are engaged on a day-to-day basis with that target market. They have the salespeople in place. They have the go-to-markets in place. What we need to do is bring them as part of that consortium and go through.
I'm sorry, Beth.
I was going to say the hyperscalers can't. I mean, the hyperscalers have been trying to get to the edge for at least a decade, and they're still failing at that. They still think core.
Yeah, and it's a trust issue for them too. But I agree with who's going to pay the money, right? And I say this a lot: is I have a phone. I'm not giving Verizon another penny for that phone. Right? I'm just not. But I will give them money for lowering my car insurance. Right? The application that gives me the ability and gives the insurance company the ability to charge me less because I'm safer, because I've used applications that run on the Verizon network, I will pay for that, and the insurance company will give me a rebate for that. Verizon can take a piece of that, right? Because they supply the required network. And that's the mindset shift and the collaboration shift that we all have to do, is that the telcos are providing a service that is unrivaled and no one else can provide it. And they're not extracting the revenue they can out of it, right? They're providing a service basically for free because we're focused on connectivity, which we always will be, and we should be, right? The telcos that's their primary objective, right? Delivering RAN is still the primary objective, but that's a 2% growth market, right? We need to find a better way.
Yeah. Well, a good one is security, because and when I was at Network X a couple weeks ago, I guess a month ago now, it came up that actually selling security, which is becoming more and more important, is actually the telcos. It's a great opportunity for the telcos, because when somebody gets phished, who do they call? They call the telco.
Yeah, true.
So, hey, we might as well sell security to the, to all the customers, because that's who they're going to call anyhow.
Fraud detection, right?
Fraud detection, right?
It's a bit worrying when you said that. I was about to shout Ghostbusters, but I'm still stuck in the 80s. Should we come to Neil? You've been dying to ask a question for ages.
It's more, partly a question, more of a statement, though. I think we're thinking about this a bit one-dimensionally. So what else can a fiber network or an access network do that isn't related to the way we build networks today? So, for example, there's an organization I was working with in the past that was going to, so weren't using a broadband connection, but we're using the fiber to do smart energy. So you bring your, more and more people are putting solar panels in, battery backup systems, electric cars. How do you bring that together in a way where you can the grid is becoming a much bigger thing than just a few power stations and some transmission. It's extending into people's homes, it's extending into factories, extending into data centers. So from that perspective, if you wanted a sovereign access service, I think you'd want that to be a sovereign access service. And I genuinely believe that's where the future is headed, energy-wise. It feels unlikely that a more collapsed control plane around that, something like that would be a requirement. We also see there's a company in California using fiber vibration to do early earthquake detection. And I think it's those, again, some of these are niche, some of them aren't, but I think some of them, I think in today's world, looking at what we've got, I think it's a harder case to make. But I think if you start thinking about, okay, let's not think about fiber just to deliver everybody's Netflix. Let's think about fiber to do the, what other applications is it that would need that kind of connectivity? And I think the kind of control plane of the kind of countries or your infrastructure is one. There's another one where I think this was in China, where they were using the data they were setting up neighborhood camera systems, so that you could, if something happened to you and your camera didn't pick it up, maybe your neighbor's camera picked it up. And again, I think those are the sort of things that you'd kind of want to have some sort of sovereign element on it, more than it's just we're tunneling it, or we don't really care where the data's coming from. And then look, the world's a different place today than it was when we kicked off the internet back in the 90s. We're more fractured as a organization, and the need for defense to have sovereign capabilities, I would say, has never been higher, at least in my lifetime. So that's another area. Are we monetizing that right now? Probably not, but I think it's an area where we're going to see developments, especially if the world kind of continues on the path.
What makes you think that it isn't being monetized today? I mean, it's running over the network.
Unfortunately, I've signed the Secrets Act, so I'm glad you said it, not me.
Yeah, it's running over the networks, of course, and the telcos are involved in all of those use cases, of course, allegedly, yes.
Did you want to go in, Warren?
Well, I don't know if this is totally apropos, but your comment and your healthcare comment made me think about a potential use case. Everyone always asks us, what's the killer access use case? And to that I always answer, I'm not smart enough to tell you, but in one of my recent late night YouTube search discovery sessions, I ran across a really interesting thing, and I could extend it into what telcos could do in the healthcare space. And it happened actually right here in London, where this might take a while, but I'll bring it back to telco, I promise. 2 infant surgeons saw a problem with outcomes between surgery and ICU. And you probably can guess what a problem in outcomes means in the infant surgery world. And they were obviously really disturbed by this because it's a very chaotic environment, a very disaggregated environment with lots of people and hands doing various things that seem unrelated but are all interconnected. Sound familiar to anyone building networks? And during one of their breaks, they were sitting in the break room and they turned on an F1 race. And the car pulled in and they watched the pit crew attack that car. And in 7 seconds, this amazingly choreographed dance effort fixed everything in the car to get it back on the track, and off it went. And they said, oh my gosh, that's happening in the ICU right now, but not in the way that pit crew does it, right? We're bumping into each other. The doctors aren't giving the notes right. The nurses are hitting, they're dropping, it's chaos. So they called Ferrari and they sent the pit crew, and the pit crew looked at them and said, this is a disaster. And they told them how to fix it, and they showed them, and they went through, I look up the YouTube, it's really amazing. Long story short, they transformed the outcomes of that operating room and that ICU unit, and they've expanded it worldwide. What's that worth? What would you pay for that? What would the hospitals, what would the healthcare systems, what would you as a parent pay for that? The telcos are in the same position in the healthcare industry, right? With remote diagnostics, with fleet management, with preparing ambulances and EMTs when they get to accident sites, what they're about to come across, right? That they don't have to spend that 50 seconds or a minute and a half or 3 minutes preparing. And that if we could have connectivity with cameras that watch the accident and prepare the EMTs, I'm just thinking kind of off the top of my head.
They can get the patient records already.
All of those are access that could dramatically save money, dramatically save lives. And it's something the telcos are uniquely qualified, I think, right now to deliver if we can build the services on top of it.
And I think that maybe comes down, if we gathered here a list of potential services and applications, it would be incredibly long. There's lots of great ideas, and there has been for many years, and yet the B2B revenues of the operators.
It's the sales model, as you mentioned.
Right. So,
who sells it? Who gets the money? How do the telcos?
The applications. Yeah.
So it's Mark here, aka Bob. I've been listening intently to this because I struggle with the edge use cases and this, and it seems to me that actually this has jumped over the use cases that we're talking about, the insurance one, for example, that you mentioned, even that healthcare one. They're jumping over the telco edge and actually hitting the end device, the CPE or the whatever that is. It's jumping over the telco. I'm struggling to see how those use cases, brilliant use cases and definitely monetizable, are actually intrinsically tied to a telecom operator, other than it's running over the network that operators provide. But the key in there is operators, not operator. It seems to me that the only time that can be really tied in is with if it's fixed access that is going in, because then it's the CPE that's being provided in by the operator and has control over that, and that brings up the question of sovereignty. The discussion on the bus kind of moved towards actually sovereignty is control of your own destiny, and I think that's a very good way of capturing that thought. Anyway, that's my. Am I correct in how I've understood that? That actually it's kind of jumping over the telco physical edge, access edge, and actually into the CPE, certainly in mobile, but in the fixed, it's a little bit more understandable.
So from an edge perspective, I think it's very important to get some definitions around edge clear. There are different versions. Okay, one, you have the device edge. One, then you have the near edge. Then you have the far edge. A lot of arguably a lot of edge cases which we consider today are already happening on device. But there are certain use cases where, for example, there is a footprint constraint, there is a power constraint. I'll give you an example. So let's say that you have these new Meta smart glasses which have come out. Have any of you seen that? It's got this AI display on top. And the processing for that today is happening on device, not on the glasses. The glasses don't have the power or the footprint for that, but it's actually happening on the person's handset. But Meta now wants to delink that, right? They're looking at it as a substitute for the phone, right? So they want to delink from that. They want to have established the connectivity to an access edge where that processing will happen and provide that same level of service. Okay, so these are the sort of use cases which will be coming up on the edge, which potentially could have scale. There's also one more thing which needs to be considered over here, that in many of these cases, the traditional asymmetric network which we have today, which is more focused on downlink than uplink, those will change, right? And that's where the telcos will have to play a role in terms of developing these sort of specialized network mechanisms which support these use cases.
So that ties into my earlier conversation about the data. Where is the data generated? How much of it is generated? How private does it need to be? Where does it need to be? Where's the applications? That's critical. If you don't understand that, and the network operators aren't in position to understand that, they should.
But those courses will spend 80% of their time on Wi-Fi and a fixed network. Where you get
Those are out in the open. These are not VR glasses.
Yeah,
these are the Ray-Ban Meta glasses. Yeah. So they're going to be out in the open.
So
Yeah.
who monetizes on those glasses?
Sorry, have you still got the mic?
Wait for the mic, yeah.
Can we get the mic back because otherwise we can't hear what
While the mic is moving, another thing to consider is why are we talking about wireless and wireline as two separate entities?
I agree.
Let's be honest. Yes, I know the telcos are behind the times and still run them separate, but that's crazy in the 21st century.
But so the Meta example there, the glasses, who owns the customer on that? Because if they at the moment it's onto the device and the device, so it's completely separated from the operator
at this point. Yes.
Yeah. So when it moves, and they say they move it to an access cloud piece. So does that mean then that the operator has to sell the glasses to the
No, the operator will not sell the glasses.
Yeah.
Let me
thank you, because there you've answered my question.
No.
Therefore, the operator doesn't get the Meta has to then strike a deal with Verizon. It has to strike a deal with AT&T. It has to strike a deal with BT,
and this is what we're trying to figure out.
This is what we're trying to fix.
It's got to strike a deal with all of those players in order to do that. And actually, they turn around and goes, do you know what? We'll just leave it on the device.
Yeah. So that's the...
And this is the conundrum. This is why we're debating this here, because this industry is trying to figure out how to make more money, and every time they try to figure it out, somebody else makes the money and the service providers don't. So,
and let's be honest, some use cases and the simple glasses of whatever simple thing you're going to do, you're probably right. Yeah. But that's a very small amount of what we're talking about, right? And eventually Meta's not going to be happy with having a glass that does just things that can be done locally on the glasses. They're going to want to expand it. And then maybe it will somewhat bypass the telco, but it's kind of like other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how is the play? It's like if you take the telco out, you have no way to get the data. So even if the data isn't residing on the access edge, which it probably, I could argue that it still will be in many, many, many cases, because to Beth's point, you don't want that data going anywhere other than right there locally on the access edge. Even if it weren't, If the telcos weren't there, there's no pipe. So the telcos do need to get in collaboration with these folks. And I agree, it's not easy because Meta has to talk to a lot of people, but they'll do it, right? If they want to make the money, it'll happen eventually. And I know we all don't think it will, but in 5 years, I guarantee the world will be so different we won't recognize it, and they'll have to talk to everybody.
In 2030, we'll all beam ourselves in, and we can come back to this discussion. But listen, we've got 5 minutes left, and that 5 minutes includes the vote. So we've kind of got about 2.5 minutes left. I just want to get one question over here very quickly. Quick question for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So I'm Salim from SUSE. So the discussion around Cloud Act and extra...
Sorry, can you hold it a bit closer?
Yeah, the discussion around... Oh, here. Yeah, sorry. I'm Salim from SUSE. So the discussion around the Cloud Act and extraterritorial risk was really insightful to me. And my understanding is that the Cloud Act applies regardless where the data is stored. And I think here we were focusing more on the hyperscalers. So how about the data that is stored at the core private clouds, for instance? Are the telco exposed to the same risk if, for instance, they are deployed with a cloud service provider that is a US company?
Lawfully, if any, even network data or core data is stored on a hyperscaler, which is of US origin, the government can access.
Well, there's two components. So typically, most of the telcos do not store their data in the hyperscalers for a lot of reasons. But the telcos are subject to lawful intercept, which requires a subpoena from a court to say, hand over this data about this person who we think is a drug dealer. So there is constraints on that, and I do know most of the telcos are pretty careful about it because that particular lawful intercept in the US at least has been abused, let's say. So the telcos are quite strict about, you have to follow exactly the steps before we'll release that data, and it's specific to a specific individual or organization. Also, telcos are common carriers, which means that, and that was put in the 1970s or 60s, it was very early, when data, when the whole internet sort of first came out. Common carrier goes way back before that for voice, but when the internet started, the idea was carried over, and that's a really critical piece of information, which is that the telco is not responsible for the content that goes over the network. So telcos don't need to police that somebody's passing porn over the internet.
Okay, but they do want to monetize it. That's the.
But hey, the porn industry.
Yeah.
The porn industry monetized the internet long before anybody else did.
Absolutely. So I know we've got more questions in the audience, but I think you're going to have to ask those directly to the panelists in the cake break because we do have to stick to our schedule, and we need to come back to the actual motion, which was argued for and against by Graham and Chris. And here is the motion again, just to remind you. So read it very carefully again. Consider what you have heard from our expert witnesses and from the floor. And then please give us a vote now with your super analog panels. Okay, let's see it. Remember, if you're voting for the motion, please point the green side at me. If you're voting against, I want to see the red side. Okay, goodness me. Oh, whoa. Goodness me. Anybody else want to hazard a guess here? I think that's kind of split. That's really hard to decide. I'm going to guess that I'm seeing more red. Do you agree? Okay, so the againsts have it. You're not red, green, colour, but I have to say VAR might come in on that and, afterwards, and it was incredibly close. I mean, sometimes it's very obvious, but that was really, really close. But I'm going to say that was slightly in Graham's favour. So, all right, thank you very much. Let's give a round of applause to our expert witnesses.